Stay in your lane.
Welcome to the Mind Your Own podcast with Aaron Sorensen and Sasha Durkin, where we stick to sports, except when we're not.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mind Your Own podcast. I'm Erin.
I'm Sasha.
And it is a snowy, cold, icy day in Nebraska. Depending on where you are probably also facing some kind of winter weather, because I saw when I was watching a little bit of the news that apparently there's like multiple storm systems going through the country right now. So if it provides any solace to anyone, we're all in this together. We're all dealing with winter again.
Yeah.
It was just fake spring.
Yeah. I always, so we have some podcasters on our network that come in from out of state, and they didn't pack great because they saw it was going to be like 60 degrees one day. And I was like, it was Danielle from Innocent Till Tipsy. She lives in Orlando. She came in, it was like 50 when she got here. And the next morning she walked outside with a t-shirt, but it was like 20 degrees. I'm like, yeah. Looking at the forecast, it's going to be 60 something, almost 70 on Sunday. And by Tuesday, we're at negative temperatures. So yay. My sinuses love it.
Yeah. I actually, over the weekend, I woke up one day with a sore throat, and you can kind of still hear it a little bit in my voice. I've taken a COVID test. I'm negative, but what I think actually happened is I think it's my allergies and my sinuses, because with the weather having gotten so nice recently, a lot of things started to get kicked up, and I am not complaining about that at all. But like the one thing about those days that happen so early where it's not yet spring, but the world around us starts to kind of think it is. I woke up and I was like, my throat is sore. Then the funny thing is by the next day it wasn't sore any longer. And now it was just more like my nose was itchy, my eyes. So once I started kind of recognizing the signs of like other allergy stuff, I'm like, oh, I bet my sinuses are just not loving what has been going on. And so it's this like these constant swings of like, we've got some nice weather. So the world starts to shift into like, is it spring yet? And then it comes back. And so if you're somebody who has allergies or sinus issues, you probably are feeling it right now, because like I said, I took a COVID test and I was convinced. I was like, oh yeah, no, I'll probably have it, and did not. But like my symptoms actually didn't even really fully match COVID, outside of just me feeling like I had a sore throat, but it was gone so quickly. And then I started to feel like allergies. So I'm like, don't you just love it?
Yeah.
Just
right.
the great time where you have no idea what it is you're dealing with. And then there's just general sickness. I will say, because I'm recording from home, my neighbors, this is the type of snow we've gotten so far. They're not shoveling. They're just brushing their sidewalks off right now. They just have a broom, and they're just brushing the sidewalks off. So at least it's not bad. Yeah,
it's pretty windy. And so I don't think we'll even bother doing that today, because it's just going to blow around.
Recommendation, just use a broom.
Exactly.
Well, first and foremost, I need to apologize. Not that I think anyone even noticed. Last week, I was so confidently talking about Sha'Carri Richardson and calling her Sha'Carri. I feel awful about it. Her name she literally goes by Carrie. So if you take Sha out of her name, which she does often, it's Carrie. And so I don't know why I was putting the softer A in there. I knew better. I literally finished recording with Sasha and was like, I knew I was mispronouncing her name, and I just could not process in the moment. So anyway, my deepest apologies for that, because it is Sha'Carri Richardson, and no disrespect to her at all, because she's fantastic. But we also did say last week that we were going to talk about something different on this podcast. And then this morning before we started recording, I messaged Sasha and was like, you know what? We probably should just wrap the Olympics, because it feels like each week we've talked about something and it has just gotten worse since we've talked about it.
Yeah.
And I want to provide some context to this. This has been one of the least viewed Olympic Games to date. And I talked a little bit about this with Greg Smith on his Straight Up Breakdown podcast, which you can go and listen to as well. That's already out and available. But we chatted about, just what I been watching the Olympics. And unfortunately, this was the lowest primetime viewership on NBC. I don't think NBC is like going to go look to give up the Olympics anytime soon. It's still a hot commodity, if you will. But let's see. The 2-week event, which concluded with the closing ceremonies on Sunday, but interestingly enough, there are still events that take place after the closing ceremonies, just like there are events that took place before the opening ceremonies. It's just how it's done. The 2-week event averaged 10.7 million viewers per night on NBC. That number slightly rose to 11.4 million when you included all of their other viewing platforms. Obviously, they had Peacock, they had different Olympic channels that you could find on your TV. Tokyo was the previous lowest, and that was 15.1 million in primetime viewership. So it's been about 4.5 to 5 million viewers lower on average in primetime. So, I mean, 4 years ago, the Winter Olympics were at about 17.8 million viewers a night. Now, NBC owns the rights to the Olympics through 2032. So again, they're not giving up on this anytime soon. I think if you probably consider I just want to offer this too. The Athletic did a nice deep dive on kind of what happened. And The Athletic, brought in the fact that their digital presence for the Olympics has changed as well. So like I brought up Peacock, which did launch in 2020. These things do shift how people watch things. Like suddenly things are available at any time. So if you wanted to watch curling in real time, you might be watching it at 1 a.m, but you can do that. You don't have to wait. If you want to watch the snowboarding competition at the moment it happens, you can do that now. You don't have to wait for the prime time. This was the first Olympics too, where they actually had the opening ceremonies broadcast live. I think it was on Peacock, but one of their digital platforms did it live, but then you could watch it again in prime time. So that does shift how viewership comes along. Like it does change things, but I would argue, and I think this is kind of the point a lot of people are getting to, is that unfortunately, this Olympics was really, there was a lot of controversy surrounding this Olympics. Yeah. And it wasn't just one thing that really caused it. It was a lot of things. I mean, even like you just Google Olympic controversy, and the top headline from Sports Illustrated is "Overshadowed by Controversy and Corruption. The troubled Beijing Olympics come to an end." The thing is like we talked about this on our original episode about the Olympics, about this particular Olympic Games, when we were talking about how, at least take a moment to look at the culture of the host country, which still 100%, like, please, like, get to know a little bit about the host country, because it's just an opportunity to learn. At the same time, which we didn't get into this, but China also has a lot of human rights, and just there's a lot of there's a lot of government corruption. There's, surveillance on the part of the Chinese government. There's authoritarianism. Journalists and athletes were being asked to use burner phones because they couldn't promise what would happen if they brought their actual phones into the country. There's the human rights element in China, which was a big concern from the get-go. But then on top of it, it seemed like controversy after controversy. On top of it, outside of the Olympics, you have everything that's happening between Ukraine and Russia, which this is a very contentious situation. So people's attention is going elsewhere. There's a lot happening. And then you take into the account everything actually happening within the games themselves. And it just, I think it's hard for a viewer. And I use myself as an example. I just didn't find myself wanting to spend my evenings just consuming this without, I don't know. It's just really hard to want to spend my nights doing that. I don't know. It was just, it just was, which is so strange because I love the Olympics typically.
Yeah, I do too. I'm not a huge, an avid watcher of the Olympics, but when it's on, I'll at least try to watch a little bit of it, depending on what the event is. But this time it was, I don't know, it just wasn't as engaging, and I'm not really sure why exactly that reason is, and it could be everything that you just listed. I think it's hard to get into and support something just event wise, not just specifically the athletes. Always going to support the athletes, but I think it was just difficult this time for whatever reason to really have it hold my attention.
I think a lot of people kind of asked the question of, and this question came from Sports Illustrated, but like, was any of this really worth it? And when it comes to the athletes themselves and the talent that you're able to put on display, like, I'm never going to discredit any of that. Mm-hmm. But there was just a lot of, I mean, there's just a lot of controversy. I don't really know how to like say that any differently, but I mean, even like they handled COVID as best as they could, but there's still like concerns about just like hosting an Olympics during what was kind of starting to peak internationally through another wave of when we were seeing the beginning stages of Omicron. There was that whole thing. And then you have the fact that people would be watching, say, the snowboard event on TV, and they'd look over and it was like a nuclear power plant sitting right next to the like, there's just a lot of things I think that made people very uncomfortable. And it was just kind of like, ooh, this, this is not great. I mean, I'm reading from Sports Illustrated, which again, if you just Google Olympics controversy, this is they're overshadowed by controversy and corruption. This is one person I'm going to go get the name of. So Alex Pruitt from Sports Illustrated they asked a bunch of their different reporters to basically give their feedback on the Olympics. And this is coming from Alex Pruitt, and said, okay, imagine that you're sitting in a talent agent's office and you're pitching this idea of the Olympics. What follows as far as what you offer is that a figure skater executes 5 flawless quadruple jumps. And so where did they were presenting all of the good stuff. So like the 5 flawless quadruple jumps, you have somebody who a snowboarder overcoming personal demons, a black speed skater making history 5 years after stepping onto the ice for the first time. So giving all of these like different, like, here's all the, so like you're a talent agent, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing. Like these are these stories that we want to tell, but then you have to add into there that, a cross-country skier is selected to light the cauldron, whitewashing accusations of genocide. And there were whitewashing accusations of genocide against her people. Tennis star is trotted out for a photo op before again vanishing from the public eye, which that is a whole shitstorm too. If like, again, going into this whole thing, that there just felt like, so people wanted to essentially know where Peng Shuai was, like the Olympic Committee was telling you she was fine. China was telling you fine. But again, they like roll her out for a photo op and then she disappears again. It's a whole, like, that's a whole thing. You have, like, I'm just like looking at all of these, you have athletes sobbing in isolation, coaches, looks like they're abusing their like these children on an international stage. So you only imagine what is being done when the cameras aren't on. Right. There's the doping scandals. There's a Ukrainian athlete asking for their country not to be invaded. So sorry, I'm doing a terrible job. I'm trying not to just like read this like verbatim. But again, this is what Alex Pruitt for the Sports Illustrated was explaining of like, yeah, you had all of these positive things that happened, but then you had all of these other things where suddenly you're like, yikes. What's what do you make of that then? And I don't know. Like I said, I think I'm a little bit in shock because what I was telling Sasha that I felt like we needed to talk about is we had been talking about 15-year-old Russian figure skater Camila and how we thought, and I still think she's a once in a generation talent. I really do. I will be blue in the face before I give that up. Mm-hmm. She's incredibly talented. She's been caught in something that she's only 15 years old. And it's just like a 15-year-old shouldn't be caught in this. But then after we recorded the previous episode, she ended up winning the short program, which it was like, all right, Not great in the sense that like there wasn't a medal ceremony. There's a lot of controversy around that, but they got to the free skate and things just went really bad, went really south. She fell twice. One was so bad it dropped her to fourth place. But then two other Russian figure skaters who won first and second are crying and like weeping and talking about how they don't understand what happened. And people are watching this on TV. And I admittedly wasn't watching it live, but I started to see some of it on Twitter. And people are noting like how they look like their coach is abusing them in the way that like the whole thing is playing out. It makes it really hard to get excited when you're watching. This is what you're watching. Again, I'm sorry to everyone. I've done a terrible job explaining all this, but made it show you that the Beijing Olympics have been nothing short of an absolute shit show.
Yeah,
absolute shit show.
I think that it's, I saw some of that on Twitter too. As everyone knows who listens to our podcast, I don't check it quite as frequently as I used to. But I saw some of that stuff coming out and I was like, man, like this is just another layer to this. I feel like disastrous onion that were the Olympics. I feel bad for those athletes. That's just, and we kind of talked about this last week, but that's just, it's brutal to watch, to experience their emotions as much as you can, not being them, but like watching this unfold was pretty difficult to watch.
Yeah. So BuzzFeed, I do want to just say, if anyone wants kind of like a really good overview of what happened specifically with the Russian figure skating situation, BuzzFeed has a really good article by Paige Skinner. It's called "What is Going On with the Russian Figure Skating Drama at the Winter Olympics." I recommend going and Googling it and looking this up. Paige does a nice job of explaining everything very, very like in order of what happened. So her first question of what is going on. So explaining everything with Camila and her positive test. And again, everything that was then said in the question of fairness around Sha'Carri Richardson and what she faced in the Summer Olympics. So again, Camila was allowed to compete. But when they got to the free skate, she fell and fell twice. One was pretty catastrophic in the sense that like it dropped her to fourth place, which for reference in this, her programs are so difficult that she can fall and it's pretty difficult to overcome her, because the way figure skating, like gymnastics work, is you have a score of like basically how tough your routine is, how tough what you are going to do is. And if you have a really, really difficult skill, it doesn't matter if you fall somewhere else, because that score is so much higher. It does encourage athletes to go for bigger, tougher skill sets, because it allows them to gain more points. And like in her case, her whole like performances were so difficult that it was like nearly impossible to overcome her. So for context, for her to fall and go all the way to fourth place, that's how bad it was. When she came off the ice, her coach was, so she's in tears. She is visibly upset because this is not what she had wanted. Her coach is asking her, and doing so in a very, like, was very hard on her, asking, why did you let it go? Why did you stop fighting? Explain to me why. The IOC president, Thomas Bach, said it was chilling to watch that, called it tremendous coldness from the coach to their athlete, noticed that the young athletes were distraught, said rather than giving her comfort, rather than trying to help her, you could feel this chilling atmosphere, this distance. Bach said at a news conference and this was this previous Friday. So in place of Camila, she obviously did not medal in the free skate. I am not even going to attempt to say their last names because I'm going to just absolutely butcher them. Her teammates, Anna, who is only 17 years old, and her other teammate, Alexandra, who is also 17, won gold and silver. Japan's Kaori, who is 21, won bronze. So you might sit here and say, well, for the Russians, they have to be happy, right? Yeah, Camila didn't win, but they had their first and second place skaters were from Russia. The coach, she was not happy, or no, excuse me, not the coach. My brain is like completely, now the coach wasn't happy. Yeah. But the young woman who won silver, she was talking about how she hates the sport. People could hear her yelling and shouting in the rink, in the venue, about how upset she was. And she was saying, everyone has a gold medal, everyone, but not me. I hate skating. I hate it. I hate the sport. I will never skate again. Never. So it was, they pan then the cameras after witnessing this, pan to the young woman who won gold. And she's just like, absolutely just like shell shocked. She is not giving anything. You can tell she's just like, doesn't know how to act. Here's this moment that should have been excited, overjoyed. And she's just sitting honestly in like a state of disbelief. And she was asked about it and said, I still don't comprehend what has happened. On one hand, I feel happy. On the other hand, I feel this emptiness inside. They did make it to the podium to get their medals. Here's the thing, and this isn't in this NPR article, but this is something I read elsewhere. The young woman who won silver, the belief system was that she had a more difficult routine, that she performed it better, and she still won silver. And somehow the young woman who won gold, it was like they didn't want the young woman who won silver to win gold. There's a lot of like wrapped up in that. And I think this is kind of going into showing like the pressure that falls on any sport that is judged, like gymnastics, like figure skating. Anything that is judged has room for that kind of thing to happen. Those criticisms have come up in those sports for a long time of like, did this person truly deserve the gold medal? This person, it is, there's a level of, it's subjective where the judges might feel at that moment like, oh, that was great. And the thing that I will say is the way that people viewed what was happening was that one young woman was having a temper tantrum. For me, I excuse the behavior that she showed because clearly there's something going on where she is so upset that she cannot process what is happening in that moment. And she's not exactly getting a ton of support from her coach. The coach looks mad. Everyone just looks angry. Everyone looks disappointed. And it's just like, can you imagine just
no,
like
I can't.
You'd be losing it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's maybe part of I don't want to call it sad. It is kind of sad to like not be able to experience the joy of even just being there because there's so much pressure on you. This made me think a little bit. It's not a direct parallel by any means, but made me think about Mikaela Shiffrin and how she got a lot of flack on social media because she didn't perform the way that the expectations were set for her to perform. And then I can't even imagine one, the immense pressure that you already are putting on yourself to perform at the level that you expect of yourself, then to fall short. And then if you come off after having a great performance and then don't feel like you're allowed to feel the joy of having accomplished what you just accomplished because it wasn't good enough somehow. I can't even imagine that kind of pressure. I think then that just goes into maybe even a larger conversation just about the amount of pressure that athletes experience to perform at their best at all times. I can't say who yet, but I'm also happen to be the producer for one of our other podcasts, Athletes Unfiltered, and they just had a guest on, and he talked about when he was playing at Nebraska and just the immense amount of pressure that he placed on himself, that every single mess up he ever had in a game just carried over. And he didn't feel like he was allowing himself to be the athlete he is now because he focused so much on the things that he performed poorly versus his overall performance in general as an athlete. And I think something that Mikaela Shiffrin said was, you can fail and not be a failure. And I think that that's super important. Like, just the overall conversation of the amount of pressure that athletes feel and endure, that a lot of us one, don't have firsthand knowledge of, but two, I think sometimes that isn't taken in consideration when you think about, we've had conversations about Simone Biles and her decision for her mental health to take care of herself, to not injure herself. And then the backlash that happens, it wasn't from her coach, but the backlash that happens from people spectating, from whatever. I think that the grace that we always talk about giving other people, like, why isn't that also extended then broader brush to athletes? Why is there it? To me, that seems like a double standard. Like, we want to, I think as a general rule, as human beings, would like to be kind to one another, understand each other, be mindful of what other people are going through in their lives. But why don't we do that for athletes too?
Yeah. And I mean, this is what's so sad about this whole situation is leading into, so this was a story that was on NPR about midway through the Olympics. Was in the headline reads, "In the midst of scandal, 3 Russian figure skaters hope to elevate their sport." The Russians put a lot of emphasis, and I want to just say I really appreciate in the BuzzFeed, not to jump between these two articles, but I'm kind of using them to complement one another. The BuzzFeed article explaining the whole situation, there's a person in the comment section, and I really appreciate this person who pointed out, basically, do not miss out on the most tragic part in this, that the Russian coach uses and discards teen girls. The main emphasis on the Russian performance this year was on the women's ability to do quads, which almost no other countries do. Lighter skaters are able to complete quads more easily because they can rotate faster. There are several accounts of the Russian team starving the Russian coach, starving their young teen girls, giving them hormones to suppress puberty and limiting their water intake during competition periods to keep weight down. Add into that the overt psychological abuse we saw after the final skate, and the child abuse goes way beyond just doping a minor. All the more reason for the minimum age to be raised, both to protect the sport, protect the athlete, and the integrity of the sport. Now, I want to talk about 2 pieces of that comment because I really appreciated that comment from a person that has their username something nursey. So maybe they're a nurse. But yes, and then going back to the NPR article, the Russians came into this with the intention of quadruple jumps. Now, men's figure skaters have been doing quadruples for some time. It is fairly predictable. I give him a ton of credit. U.S. Men's Olympic skater, and he was a coach this year, Adam Rapone. He gave a great interview on this. He talked about how quads have become very commonplace for the men's sport. Now, women want to elevate that, just like Simone Biles has done things for women's gymnastics that have elevated women's gymnastics and brought along skill sets that have typically only been done by the men's sport. She is showing that women can do them too. But it doesn't mean that like everything has to be exactly the same. Like, think of like, here's the thing. We're all about equality, but like at the same time, it's understanding that men and women's bodies are different. Men carry their weight in their shoulders. Women carry their weight more like their center of balance, I should say. But like where weight distribution lands, women tend to see that in more of their midsection. And that changes how you can do things. It changes how you rotate. It can change how, if you're doing gymnastics or, competitive cheerleading, whatever, it changes anything you do, any sport you do, it changes based on your physiology. It is. And that's okay. But that means with these quadruple jumps, it has taken time for women to bring this into the sport itself. Many have tried. Some have been successful in some places, but it was Camila who she landed the first quadruple in Olympic competition. And again, I want to just say, because I think it's so important, she is a stunning athlete. And I hope that this brings, I can't say I'm confident in this, but I hope she can go find a coach, and I hope there's change. I'm not overly confident with Russia because nothing ever changes with Russia, but she is a beautiful figure skater. Her jumps and what she does are so effortless. Now, could that change if, say, her body changed? Sure. But I actually think if she put more muscle on her body, imagine what she could do.
Oh, the power.
She'd have so much strength and power. She's a beautiful figure skater. She is incredibly talented. She is one of those people where when I watched her, I was like, aside from anything else, she has a talent that I really hope is not ruined by the people around her, because she could be just so spectacular. She already is spectacular, and she's doing so through a lot of terrible things. So imagine what she could do if she actually had the proper support from coaching. The thing with what you had to do with these to get these quadruple jumps is Russia didn't just say, hey, you know what, Camilla seems like she could do this. It seems like this is something she's potentially capable of. They're like, we're going to have every single one of our figure skaters land these quadruples. We want everyone going for them, which that's not maybe possible for everyone. And so the pressure that they put on them to basically make this possible is, I don't know, it just becomes a question of like, should all of them be pushing themselves to that? Is it, what's the limit? Where's the limit for an athlete where an athlete's like, that's not something that I can be, that's not my strength. My strength is here. Yeah. But it was like, this was what the Russians came into this Olympics doing, is they wanted to be the ones landing these quadruple jumps. They wanted to make the history. They wanted to do everything. And when that's the way you go about it, is we are going to basically force our athletes to have to accomplish these things, you're going to start to see breakdowns, the mental health piece of it. You're looking at, like that commenter said, expectations of them losing weight, of them staying a certain size, of them essentially having to be these young athletes always. And again, they're 15, 17, and 17 are the three Russian skaters that we talked about. So Maria Bell, who is one of the United States figure skaters, she's 25 years old. She is the oldest United States national champion in almost 100 years. Like, when she got selected for the Olympic team, people were like, oh my gosh, have you seen how old she is? She's 25. She's 25. That's not old at all. Like, that is so young. But when you're skating around people who are on average 15 to 18 years old, like that does feel old. Now, she, because of her experience with the sport, did come forward after all of this and said that the minimum age to skate should be 18 years old, like to skate at the Olympics, because in her mind, and a lot of people agree with her, when they are so young, they're being taken advantage of to a degree that is just unhealthy, both mentally, physically, you name it. And I mean, this is something where could them increasing the age to 18 make things better for the sport overall? I think so. But the question that I have is, how do you hold Russia accountable in all this? Because if you make the age 18, they're going to just seemingly find ways to like just get around, like not get around it where they like lie about age so much, but just like, again, suppressing puberty, putting young women into situations where it's like, fine, if you have to be 18, then we will make an 18-year-old be like she's 15 or 14. And it's just like, that's the stuff that worries me, is how do you actually hold them accountable?
Right. I feel like, or they'd find, it comes across to me, given their track record, that they would find that loophole somehow, some way. And then I feel like that's just then for the skaters that, you know, if the age limit was moved up to 18, there'd be a workaround, or they'd put even an extra added layer of pressure on these athletes to perform at the level of a younger skater. And it's bonkers.
I really
thinking about that.
Yeah. And I really love these comments. Like, there's very few times I would ever tell you to read the comment section, but the comment section of this BuzzFeed article is actually really good. So another person by the name of Coffee Addict, which same, said, I feel bad for all three of them. You had a 15-year-old who had zero responsible adults in her life. Then there's the 17-year-old second place girl who, yes, had a bit of a tantrum, but clearly had so many expectations placed on her that getting a record for her number of quads, again, going back to what mattered to the Russians, were these quad jumps. So that's why this stood out to me, is the fact that that was why she was so upset, is she gets this record for her quads, didn't win gold, and it wasn't considered enough. And then you have the 17-year-old winner who was completely ignored. And then another person, which again, I'm like really loving these comments. Another person said, I read that some have cast her, talking about Camilla, as a villain. Some have cast her as a victim. But the truth is, she is the victim of the villains. And I really like that. She's a victim of the villains. And I feel like Russia's going to find this podcast and like come knock on our door. But I mean, here's something that I actually said on Greg's podcast, the Straight Up Breakdown podcast, because we talked about this. Until Russia is actually held accountable for any of the things that it does, it's not going to matter. So you have all these doping scandals, and what does Russia end up having happen? They, several years go by, they finally get slapped with some, we're going to show you what happens. Their athletes get to still compete in the Olympics, still get to compete on an international stage. They just don't get to have their Russian national anthem played when they win. They don't get to have their flag flown when they win. What do they get to do? They get to still compete, and they get to compete as the Olympic Committee of Russia, the ROC, the Russian Olympic Committee. That's what it is. They get to compete as the ROC, which you have Vladimir Putin sitting in the stands at the opening ceremonies of these games, cheering them on, waving to them, la 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 la, getting ready to invade Ukraine, all this just fun stuff. He's just sitting there, just so happy for his athletes. You have the literal ruler of Russia sitting in the opening ceremonies, cheering his athletes on who are competing under a Russian Olympic Committee. And you think that that's showing them anything until the Olympic Committee actually gets just decides to actually do something and prevent them from competing. Nothing is changing. They are going to just view this as a slap on the wrist. So congrats. This is going to be what we see again in 2 years at the Summer Olympics. This is what we're going to see 4 years at the next Winter Olympics. It is going to continue because nobody is holding them accountable. And it's incredibly frustrating when you watch these talented athletes who are sucked up into a system that is not going to allow them to be anything but a part of a controversial system that doesn't care about them as athletes, just cares about the gold medals and what they can show people for accomplishing said, oh, we're going to be the ones doing the quad jumps. We're going to be blah, 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 blah. Like, it's maddening because it just doesn't matter. Like, we're having this conversation. We'll probably have it in 4 years because the Olympics aren't going to do anything. I will eat my words if they do, but they talk about, you have the president of the Olympic Committee basically saying how chilling that was to watch and how do something about it, then, buddy. Like, you have the power, but instead they're just going to talk about how sad it was. Yeah.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think it is super frustrating. Like, okay, cool. Like, everybody sees this play out, and then you have comments like that, and then what? So we're just going to comment on it, and then that's it. Like, that's it. Cool.
Yeah. And I think the viewership really showed this. But the thing is like, at the end of the day, the Olympics, like, it kind of feels like not like a helpless situation. I want people to kind of just be like, well, there's nothing I can do. Like, move on. Like, there's clearly, like, we need to be vocal about it. We need to talk about it because that is a way to make changes by being vocal and talking about things. But I will say it does feel a little bit like, is anyone in the Olympic Committee even listening? Do they even care? Or is it really just about like withholding what they believe to be this, like, just like basically make it all be okay? It just, the Olympics, like, for me growing up, I often joked, I am never more patriotic than when the Olympics are on, because it's like, I'm yay, USA, whatever. And then like the Olympics comes on and I'm like decked out. I'm like, USA, Olympic. Yes. Like, here I am. Like, I literally have like shirts that say like USA specifically just for the Olympics. Like, this is the time. You want me to be patriotic? The Olympics is my time. This time. And so like, for me growing up, like, I would watch these things and just idolize these athletes. I would be so impressed. I would like fall in love with so many of them and their talent and just like what they are able to do. And it's not that wasn't in these Olympics. We talked about it last week. There were a ton of firsts. Or maybe it was 2 episodes ago. Regardless, we've talked about how there were a lot of firsts that happened in these games. Like, there were a lot of greatness that happened, and it all got overshadowed by the fact that all of this other stuff was happening. And it's like, is that what they want? Do they want people to just not care?
Yeah. I feel like that's a really good point. Like, do they care more about controversy than they do about celebrating all the other amazing things that happened? I mean, you had a speed skater that broke like a world record. There are a few of them actually. And like, that was just like a blip on the map because the only thing that people were focusing on seemingly in the media was what was going on with the figure skaters.
It's just so sad. It makes me sad because here's for the sake of like, in case you maybe missed some of these, here are historical firsts. And I'm going to just focus on the United States because our listenership is 100% USA based. Historic first achieved by Team USA. This is coming from NBC, which again, NBC is your Olympic provider. So it makes sense that they want you to know the good things too. Kaylee Humphreys, 35 years old, was the first to clinch gold for the women's monobob event. She had won 3 Olympic medals representing Canada, but this is her first medal representing Team USA. This also marks the first ever medal to be won at a women's monobob. The event debuted in 2022, if you are wondering. Here's the thing. I don't actually know what monobob is. And I literally had to Google what is monobob. And I appreciate the Olympics.com having a article on their website titled, "What is the new female-only Olympic monobob event that will feature at Beijing Olympics?" So it's like a bobsled. It's just an individual monobob, which makes sense after I read it. While the teammates of bobsled divide among themselves the roles of pushing, driving, braking, the monobob athlete has to do it all on her own in a sled weighing at least 162 kilograms. Bless this person, the Olympian Jasmine Finlater Victorian from Jamaica said, "It does get lonely sometimes. The sled also weighs almost the same as I do as the two woman bobsled, and you need someone to help you carry it." But just anyway, super fun. The United States won a medal for this event, which is super fun too. Like I said, thank you to the internet for when I Googled it, it was right there, ready, available.
Yes.
I do want to just point out again, I'm reading these achievements from NBC.com. So if you're wondering where I'm getting these, that is where I am. So Erin Jackson, 29 years old, made history by becoming the first Black woman to medal in the niche sport of speed skating. I love how NBC claims it's a niche sport. Is speed skating niche? Is it a niche sport? I would not have considered it niche, but are all of these sports niche, to be honest with you? Like monobob, that feels niche. Anyway, she clinched gold during the women's 500-meter speed skating event. So that was incredible for her and, obviously Team USA, but really incredible for her. Lindsay Jacob Ellis, who's 36, and Nick Baumgartner, 40, were the first pair to earn Team USA a medal in the mixed team snowboard cross. By the way, Olympic sports are just, winter sports are just so wild. The Team USA trio of Ashley Caldwell, Chris Lillis, and Justin Schoenfeld secured the United States their first gold in freestyle skiing aerials since 1998. That is, again, these sports are so wild to look at them. Nathan Chen, who's 22 years old, clinched the first Olympic gold medal during the men's free skate for the United States. He is the 7th American man to win a gold medal in Olympic figure skating. So, in the first Olympic gold since 2010 for the United States in men's figure skating. Let's see. Alex Hall earned his first Olympic medal in men's free ski slope style. And then 22-year-old skating star Nathan Chen set the record for the highest score in the men's figure skating to go back. They should have put those two sections together. Anyway, basically Nathan Chen just out here like crushing all the records. But so Alexander Hall also had his in the men's free ski slope style. The oldest woman to medal at any Winter Games was Lindsay Jacob Ellis. I said she was 36 years old. She became the oldest United States athlete to earn a first place position on the podium. That's wild. 36 is not old at all, but
no. Hope not.
I digress. So let's see. Elena Myers-Taylor, who's 37 years old, made Olympic history after clinching her fourth and fifth medals in Beijing. Her first medal was a bronze in the 2010 Vancouver Olympics in the two-woman bobsled. She had silver in the two-woman bobsled in Sochi in 2014 and Beijing in 2018. She added a third silver medal to her Olympic resume in the brand new women's monobob in 2022. So she made history as the most decorated Black winter Olympian when she claimed another bronze in the two-woman bobsled on the penultimate day of the Beijing Winter Olympics. So long story short, there's so many, here's the thing. This list keeps going. There's other people who had amazing events. And there's people who aren't from the United States who made history as well. And I think it's really easy, especially after, I think it's really easy to kind of get hung up in the idea of like, well, the Olympics didn't feel very special, and they didn't. But I do want people to at least like, and I'm trying to be mindful of this for myself too. A lot of really good did happen. And I hope that in the next 2 years and in the next 4 years, we can find some of that Olympic spirit again. Mm-hmm. And what I've always kind of felt Olympic spirit is just this, like, you have this opportunity to watch the best athletes in the world on this international stage and watch them do great things. But I don't want to watch that at the sake of their mental health. I don't want to watch that at the sake of their physical health. I want to watch that knowing that they're competing because they love it. And this is something that they are not being abused for. And I think that's been the hardest part, is realizing in a lot of ways, so many of these athletes, which over the last 3 episodes I've talked about, Camilla being this incredible athlete, and I still feel this way about her. I still think, but it makes me sad that, like, here's this young woman that, like, I so badly want to, like, I want her to just enjoy. And you know what? If she ultimately doesn't continue figure skating, I just want her to live her life. I just want her to have a happy life. I would love to see her go and just be an absolute badass in figure skating, but the situation she's in may not allow for her to be that way. And it's really unfortunate. But, like, I don't want to watch Olympics where behind the scenes we're watching these athletes fall apart because they're being abused by their coaches. Like, I don't think anyone wants that. No one wants that.
No, I agree with you. I hope that maybe, I don't know, maybe our little podcast will help in some way, maybe make some changes.
Wants to come on the podcast.
Right?
I'll have her on. We'll have to get, like, Google Translate going. Although I'm pretty sure she knows how to speak English, because literally everyone knows how to speak English. And then it makes me feel really sad that, like, I can, like, half speak, like, not even very well, but I can kind of speak German, but not well. Like, does me no good. It's like, to all of you who took I did take German seriously, but, like, to people who, like, took, it's not too late. Duolingo exists. Duolingo exists, and that Duolingo is, like, single-handedly running TikTok. So look, maybe I need to sign up and start taking, like, Spanish or something, so I can actually, like, learn another language that no one's going to know. If you, like, just tuned in, you're like, how did you get here? It's just basically me saying that if we want to have a Russian figure skater on our podcast, I'm not going to be able to speak Russian. And I could have said I was going to use Duolingo to learn Russian, but I think Spanish would be more of a prominent language for me right now. Yeah. That's how I got there.
The other thing too is that, like, even if you learn a second language, if you don't utilize it all the time, you'll lose it. I took 4 years of Spanish in high school. I don't remember anything but the Spanish I learned when I was working in a kitchen.
I actually, so fun fact, I became, like, I used semi-fluent, like, in the sense that, like, I could listen, I could understand what someone was saying to me in German. I could speak German all right. I could read it. I still had plenty of work to do. One of my favorite stories to tell people is how, when I was in Germany, I was, like, really adamant that I wanted to speak to people, or at least try to speak to people in German. And I told a woman that I really liked. Well, I wanted to tell her I really liked her earrings, and I did. And she looked at me like I had snakes growing out of my ears. And I was just like, well, all right, like, whatever. Maybe, like, she finds that compliment to be odd. It wasn't until later that I realized I told her I liked her yogurt. I didn't use the right word. So she had to have just been so confused what this person was telling her. So I will say you're very, very right. If you don't speak it, if you're not around it, like I am an absolute atrocious mess when it comes to German now. Like I can kind of understand, but it's just not the same. So if you are taking, keep going, because you will lose it if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just, the Olympics have come and gone. It's just funny. Like when I think back on 2 episodes ago when we were talking about the Olympics and just Lunar New Year had just started. We were talking about just all the excitement around the games and how the athletes were having this incredible opportunity to experience the Lunar New Year firsthand in China. And so many of the amazing event organizers were providing that experience to these athletes. And I'm still so grateful for so many, to see the athletes and many of them who shared it on TikTok or on Instagram. Clearly that experience meant the world to them. And I'm so grateful for it. And for so many of them, the Olympics were amazing. But I think it's just a reminder that things don't have to continue operating the way that they have. Things can get better. And I love the idea of the Olympics, but I think if nothing else, the last 2.5 weeks of the Olympics have shown me that it's not great right now. And if we want to be able to celebrate these athletes truly for everything, we need to find a way to make the Olympics a more fair and equitable space for all, because otherwise we're just going to keep running into this every 2 to 4 years. And it's just who wants to watch that? Clearly people don't, because people didn't show up for it this time.
Exactly.
I don't know. Well, who knows? I will point out really quick, one of the most amazing dates. We are recording this on one of the best dates of history. It's 2/22/22. It's a palindrome, which means it's the same forward as it is backwards. Obviously, there have been other palindrome dates. It's not like this is the first or anything. People, because it is falling on a Tuesday, are calling it Tuesday TWOSDA. My favorite line about this whole date is CNN wrote, "It's the most exceptional date in over a decade." But they wrote that because it's coming from palindrome enthusiast Aziz Anan. He's a professor of electrical engineering at the University of Portland in Oregon, and he has been studying palindrome dates for over 14 years, which is amazing. I do love this. He said he feels these dates have magical powers in terms of getting people's attention, no matter the date. So he also brought up that November 11th, 2011 was another one, being 11/11/11. So basically, by the time you're listening to this, this will be, well past. But a lot of people are expecting Vegas to be very, very busy on Tuesday. Because a lot of people are going to get married on 2/22/22. Sacramento, California will have had 222 couples married at the state capitol. They set that up intentionally. The ceremony will start at 2 p.m. and they will marry 222 people in 22 minutes. So that's how they do that. I'm guessing they just have them all. I don't know. I'm going to have to look this up. By the time everyone's reading this, let's go Google. Couples in Singapore also get eager to get married. They have a bunch of people who have already signed up at they said that they had a large number of people who had registered to get married on February 22nd. This is so wild. People are like, how did we get here? I just am really, really sad. But here's the thing. If you're listening to this and you're like, dang, I missed it. I missed the 2/22/22 fun. Technically, February 23rd and February 28th are also palindrome dates. So 2/23/22 is the same. And same thing, I guess, couldn't all of them be? February 23rd through February 24th.
Yeah.
My brain was not, I was like, why just those 2 dates? So basically you can celebrate palindrome dates for the rest of the month if you want to. They're all going to be palindromes. Maybe not as cool as 2/22/22, but still pretty cool.
Yeah.
Still pretty cool. Well,
Dig it.
there's your information that no one asked for. Although I actually did see, I will leave everyone with this. If a portal opens for you on 2/22/22, will you email us and let us know at mindyourownpodcast@hillvarsity.com? The reason why is I stumbled upon an astrologist on TikTok who was saying that on 2/22/22, you need to manifest things because a portal to the higher being realm, which I'm not making fun of this at all. Like I do get kind of like, I do find this stuff really interesting. But apparently great things could happen today. So if something great happens, whether a portal to the other dimension opens, or you get a raise, or you get a new job, or something significant happens in your life, will you let us know?
I'm manifesting getting my first goal in a hockey game tonight.
Ooh.
I'm manifesting it right now.
Yeah, 2/22/22. What if you get 2?
How crazy would that be? That would be amazing.
Wild.
Okay, I'm manifesting 2.
I'm manifesting.
But I'll take 1.
We'll take whatever. We'll take it. But I'm going to manifest it for you too, because I have nothing to manifest today. I'm just like out here living. Here, I'm going to manifest another video on my TikTok to go viral other than the one of me walking into a cabinet door.
Hilarious, by the way. That's really hard.
The fact that 150,000 people are like, yes, that's the video. I'm like, of course it is. But the amount of people who think I did that on purpose, the reality behind that video is I was trying to get Scout to record a TikTok with me. And so I had gone and gotten her like container of treats and brought it into the living room. I forgot that I left the cabinet drawer open, or the cabinet door open, and turned the corner and walked smack dab into it because I was looking at the videos I had just filmed on my phone of Scout. I might share the whole video at some point. I had a total Jim Halpert office moment because after I had hit my head, put the treats back, I realized our Ring camera in the kitchen, and you see me turn really slowly and just stare at it, like realizing it had been captured, which I'm glad it did, because there are many moments where I'm like sad that our house did not capture the stupid thing. Like the time Jax chased a rabbit into our house. I wish there had been cameras to capture that moment, or the time there was a spider on the cushion of a chair that we have. And instead of just killing the spider, I picked the whole cushion up and took it outside, and you can see me in our front yard. So I'm like, why could none of that be captured?
So you're saying I need to get a ring inside my house, because there are often times when, especially Mario moments, that I want to capture. That would be amazing. No. Like I still haven't captured. He does this thing and it's the cutest damn thing ever, but it's also hilarious. Every time he sees a toy on the ground, he like jumps at it with his paws like really hard, and it's super cute. And so I'm just going to get a ring so I can capture that. Good vibes on a 2/22/22 day.
Yeah, maybe there's a deal out there somewhere where somebody can is it like Amazon running a deal today?
Yeah. Let's go look.
Let's go look. Well, if you have anything exciting to share with us, send us an email at mindyourownpodcast@hillvarsity.com. We have gotten some emails from you as far as like topic ideas, which we love. So we will be definitely following up on those here soon. But just shoot us a note. We love to hear from you. mindyourownpodcast@hillvarsity.com. We're also on Twitter at Erin Sorensen and at Sasha72. I promise we won't talk about the Olympics next week, because if we are, good Lord. But we will be back and we will talk about more exciting, fun stuff. Who knows? 2/22, go live. I hope you're all living your best palindrome lives for the next few days.
Do it.
And we will be back with the next episode next week. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you later.
Bye.
A Huda Media Production.